I woke up to the sound of a horn blaring at 4 a.m. At first, I thought I was dreaming, until I realized it was real. My sleepy eyes focused through the darkness. And there it was, a massive, shiny bus parked squarely in my driveway, right on my property, blocking my car in like it owned the place. And at the wheel, Karen, my neighborhood's self-appointed sheriff, waving cheerfully at her guests as if nothing was wrong. I rubbed my eyes, trying to process what I was seeing. "No way," I muttered under my breath. "This can't be happening." But it was. My driveway, my rules, my land, and yet somehow Karen had convinced herself that it was a free-for-all. I stormed outside, pajamas and all, flashlight in hand, and demanded she move the bus. She laughed. That sharp, shrill, mocking laugh that immediately set my blood pressure skyrocketing. "Oh, come on," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It's just a little parking. You don't own the street, you know." It was like a switch flipped in me. Normally, I'm calm. I try to be reasonable. I follow the rules. But this was different. My driveway wasn't a public space, and my patience had limits, especially when someone waltzed onto my property at 4 in the morning, thinking they could do whatever they wanted. I glanced around and noticed the boulders I'd been meaning to arrange along the edge of my driveway. Decorative, landscaping stones, harmless enough, but heavy and solid. An idea started to form, a plan so satisfying in its simplicity. I couldn't help but smile. If Karen thought she could treat my land like a playground, she was in for a little education. Within minutes, I had rolled a few of the heaviest boulders into strategic positions, effectively creating a blockade that no bus could ignore. The headlights of the bus glared back at me as if daring me to continue. I didn't hesitate. One by one, boulders shifted until the bus was trapped. There was no forward, no backward, just a solid wall of rock staring at Karen and her guests like the world's most inconvenient welcome sign. Karen's laughter quickly turned to screams. I don't know what she yelled. Something about legality, neighbors' rights, and the HOA. But all I heard was the sound of her defeat. She hadn't expected resistance. She hadn't expected a Boulder welcome. And that's when I realized this was just the beginning. If she thought she could test me once, she clearly had no idea what she was in for. By sunrise, the entire neighborhood was stirring, and word about the 4 a.m. driveway blockade spread faster than wildfire. I was sipping coffee on my porch, watching Karen pace back and forth in front of the trapped bus, her face turning redder with every honk from frustrated guests. It was surreal, like something out of a slapstick movie. Only it was my driveway, and I was the main character. Neighbors started stepping outside, drawn by the noise and the chaos. Some were laughing, others shaking their heads, and a few looked genuinely concerned. I waved politely at Mr. Thompson from next door, who gave me a slow nod as if acknowledging my perfectly executed statement of ownership. Across the street, Mrs. Delgado was filming the scene on her phone, already picturing the viral video she would post later. Karen, however, was in full panic mode. She tried to climb out of the bus to confront me directly, but the angle made her wedge awkwardly between the vehicle and the boulders. She shouted threats about legal action and HOA fines, but from where I was standing, her voice sounded more like a squeaky cartoon villain than a serious threat. I calmly reminded her, "You're on my property. You asked for this lesson." That made her sputter, and in the chaos, her guests started arguing among themselves. Some blamed her, some muttered about needing to get to work, and one brave soul tried to squeeze around a corner of the boulder setup, only to realize it was impossible. It didn't take long for the first calls to the HOA to be made, which meant Karen had officially escalated the situation. I watched as the emails and text messages began flying back and forth. "Please remove the boulders. This is harassment. You are endangering vehicles." And the ever-classic, "This is unacceptable." I chuckled quietly because, technically, the boulders weren't even illegal. They were just very, very effective. By mid-morning, the street had become a scene of curiosity and mild chaos. Kids rode their bikes past, Neighbors stopped to take pictures, and a few drivers had to detour entirely. Karen's ego was visibly deflating as she tried to coordinate a bus maneuver. That was physically impossible. At one point, she even muttered, "I just don't understand why he did this," as if I had magically appeared from nowhere to ruin her morning. The entire event was teaching her, and everyone watching, a simple lesson. You can't invade someone's space without consequences. And while the bus remained stuck, the neighborhood was quietly rooting for me. The unexpected hero of a very early morning showdown. By the time she finally gave up, Karen was pacing, fuming, and calculating how to retaliate. But little did she know, her revenge plan was about to backfire spectacularly. By mid-afternoon, Karen had regrouped. I thought maybe she'd accept defeat, but apparently her ego had other plans. She had called in reinforcements, her friends, the so-called HOA task force, a couple of overly confident neighbors who apparently thought they could intimidate me. The street was alive with the tension of an impending showdown, and I was ready. I stepped outside, surveying my little fortress of boulders, now gleaming in the afternoon sun. The bus was still trapped, immovable, a monument to early morning stubbornness. Karen stomped up, flanked by her entourage, waving her arms dramatically. "You think this is funny?" she shouted. "This is harassment, and you will be held accountable." I raised an eyebrow, pretending to consider her threats seriously. "Accountable for what?" I asked casually. "For showing you where my property line is? For reminding you that 4 a.m. isn't a free-for-all?" The words felt good leaving my mouth. Sharp, precise, and undeniably true. Her friends tried to step forward, attempting to persuade me to remove the rocks. I shook my head. "Sorry, it's my property. Your friend parked like she owned it. She'll have to wait." That was all it took to make the tension spike. One of them muttered something about legal repercussions, clearly unsure if they were serious or just trying to sound intimidating. Meanwhile, the rest of the neighborhood had started gathering, curious bystanders enjoying the spectacle. Children perched on bikes, neighbors leaned over fences, and someone even started live-streaming the chaos. Karen's bravado was beginning to crumble under the weight of public attention and the slow realization that her plan was failing spectacularly. Karen decided to escalate further. She marched over to my porch and began rattling off regulations, HOA guidelines, and imaginary rules that supposedly gave her authority over my driveway. I listened patiently, letting her words wash over me. Then I smiled. I reached down and tapped one of the boulders. "This isn't just decoration," I said. "It's education." Her face went from furious red to pale shock. Suddenly, she realized that no amount of shouting, pleading, or HOA citations could move 2 tons of solid rock. Her plan had completely backfired, and her guests were starting to murmur among themselves, questioning why they had even come in the first place. By late afternoon, Karen had stormed off, her reinforcements in tow, muttering threats that no one took seriously. I watched them leave, a quiet sense of victory settling over me. My driveway was mine, the boulders unyielding, and the lesson had been delivered loud and clear. Respect boundaries, or deal with the consequences. Little did Karen know, this was far from over. She might have retreated for now, but her next move was already forming, and I needed to be ready. By the next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Karen hadn't given up. Word had spread about the Boulder blockade, and she was determined to reclaim her dignity and get her bus unstuck. She returned with an even bigger entourage this time. Neighbors, friends, and, rumor had it, someone from the HOA board itself. It looked like she had declared war. I stepped outside, fully prepared, coffee in hand, surveying my fortress of rocks. The sun glinted off the boulders, casting long shadows across the driveway, and I couldn't help but smile. Karen's bus still sat trapped, immovable and obstinate, much like its owner. Karen approached, trying her usual theatrics. "This is completely unacceptable," she shouted, waving her arms as though she were conducting an orchestra of outrage. "You are breaking all the rules and I will not stand for it." I stayed calm, letting her words hit the empty air between us. I didn't break anything, I replied evenly. I simply reminded you that my driveway isn't public property. That's all. My voice was firm, deliberate, and careful not to rise. Her frustration boiled over. She leaned into the bus, trying to manipulate it around the boulders. But physics wasn't on her side. The heavier the rocks, the more impossible the maneuver became. Her attempts grew desperate, ridiculous even, as she pushed, tugged, and shouted instructions at her helpless passengers. Meanwhile, the neighbors gathered, fully invested in the spectacle. Some took photos, others filmed, and a few whispered to each other in amazement. Karen's humiliation was complete, her ego crushed under the weight of literal and figurative boulders. Finally, she stopped. Breathing hard, glaring, and clearly exhausted, Karen turned to me. "You'll pay for this," she spat. I nodded calmly. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe you'll remember. Next time not to trespass." The simplicity of the statement seemed to sting more than anything else. At that moment, I realized the victory wasn't just about rocks or blocked buses. It was about boundaries, respect, and standing your ground, even when the odds and the neighborhood seemed against you. Karen finally backed away, muttering threats that sounded empty in the light of day. Her entourage followed, leaving her stranded with her dignity in shambles and her bus trapped for a little while longer. By evening, calm had returned. The rocks remained in place, a silent but powerful reminder that my property, my rules and my patience were not to be underestimated. The neighborhood had witnessed a modern legend in the making. The day HOA Karen learned a driveway was not her playground, and as the sun set over the quiet street, I leaned back, satisfied. The lesson was clear. Respect your neighbors, or prepare for a boulder-sized reality check. Thanks for watching! If you loved this wild HOA showdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our crazy neighborhood stories. Drop a comment below telling us what you would do if this happened to you. And don't forget to like this video to help us bring more epic stories like this to the channel.